What if the voice inside your head, the one that never seems to sleep, the one that keeps you restless in the dark, is not really you at all? What if everything you've been chasing, every worry, every fear, every sleepless night, has been built on an illusion you were never meant to carry? Listen closely, because tonight we are not here to fight the darkness. We are here to understand it, to dissolve it, and finally to rest. There is a quiet truth that most people spend their entire lives running from, not because it is painful, but because it is too simple, too freeing. And in a world that thrives on complexity, simplicity can feel almost frightening. You have been taught to hold on to your thoughts, your identity, your struggles, as if they define you. But what if they don't? What if the very thing keeping you awake at night is the belief that you must control everything, that you must hold your life together with constant effort? Imagine for a moment a river flowing effortlessly, without hesitation, without fear of where it is going. It does not stop to question its direction. It does not resist the rocks in its path. It simply moves, guided by something greater than itself. And yet, here you are, lying awake, trying to control every outcome, trying to predict every tomorrow, trying to become something you believe you are not yet. But listen carefully. You are not separate from the flow of life. You are the river. You always have been. The reason sleep escapes you is not because your body has forgotten how to rest. It is because your mind refuses to let go. It clings to unfinished conversations, imagined futures, past regrets, spinning stories over and over again, as if thinking harder will somehow bring peace. But peace does not come from thinking. It comes from surrender. And surrender is not weakness. It is trust. There was once a man who spent years trying to fix his life. Every day he planned, worried, analyzed, convinced that if he could just solve everything, he would finally feel at ease. But the more he tried, the more anxious he became. One night, exhausted beyond measure, he simply gave up, not in defeat, but in acceptance. He whispered softly, "I cannot carry this anymore. God, I place it in your hands." And for the first time in years, he slept peacefully. That is the paradox of life. The moment you stop trying to control everything is the moment everything begins to fall into place. Faith is not about having all the answers. It is about trusting the one who does. It is about recognizing that you are not alone in this journey, that there is a divine rhythm moving through your life, even when you cannot see it. The stars above you do not struggle to shine. The earth does not struggle to turn, and your heart does not struggle to beat. So why should your life be any different? Perhaps tonight, instead of asking, "What will happen tomorrow?" you simply breathe and say, "I trust what is meant for me will find me, will find me." There is something deeply sacred about the night. It strips away the noise of the world, leaving you alone with your thoughts. But those thoughts, they are not always truthful. They are echoes of conditioning, of fear, of old beliefs that no longer serve you. And yet you listen to them as if they are your master. But you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them, the silent observer, the presence that remains unchanged no matter what passes through your mind. Thoughts come and go like clouds, but you are the sky, and the sky does not resist the clouds. It allows them to drift, to dissolve, to disappear. So tonight, allow your thoughts to come. Do not fight them. Do not chase them. Simply watch them, as if you are sitting by the edge of a quiet lake, observing ripples on the surface. The more you observe without attachment, the calmer the waters become. There is a divine stillness within you, a place untouched by worry, untouched by fear. It has always been there, waiting for you to return. But you have been looking for peace in the future, in outcomes, in control. And peace cannot be found there. Peace is here, in this breath, in this moment. The truth is, you were never meant to carry the weight of the entire world on your shoulders. That burden belongs to God. Your role is simply to live, to trust, to flow. And when you begin to understand this, something shifts within you. The tight grip you have on life begins to loosen. The constant tension begins to soften. And slowly, gently, the sleep begins to return, not as something you force, but as something you allow. Because sleep is an act of faith. It is the quiet declaration that says, for this moment, I let go. I trust that I am held even in the dark. So as you lie there tonight, feeling the weight of your thoughts, remember this. You do not need to solve your entire life before you can rest. You do not need to have everything figured out. You only need to trust that what is unfolding is part of a greater design. And even if you cannot see the path ahead, even if your heart feels heavy, even if your mind continues to wander, know this, you are exactly where you need to be. Nothing is missing. Nothing is out of place. God is working. Even now, in ways you cannot yet understand. So breathe slowly, deeply, and let the night hold you. Let go. Just a little more, and trust just a little deeper. Because in that surrender, in that quiet trust, you will find not only sleep, but a peace that has been waiting for you all along. And as this moment gently fades into the next, remember, everything is unfolding exactly as it should, and you are safe in God's plan. And as that quiet trust begins to settle within you, like soft waves reaching the shore, something deeper starts to reveal itself. Not through effort, not through struggle, but through stillness. Because the truth you've been searching for has never been loud. It is always whispered, patiently, waiting for you to become quiet enough to hear it. You see, there is a habit within the human mind, a restless tendency to hold on, to cling to identity, to stories, to the idea of me as something separate, something fragile that must be protected at all costs. And so you build walls. You create expectations. You carry memories like heavy stones in your pockets. And then you wonder why you feel so tired, why peace feels so distant. But what if I told you the exhaustion you feel is not from life itself, but from resisting it? Think of a time when something didn't go the way you planned. Perhaps you replayed it over and over, thinking, it should have been different. I should have done more. I should have known better. And in that moment, you were not just experiencing the event, you were fighting reality itself. And that fight, that silent resistance, is what drains you. There was a woman who once carried the weight of a single mistake for years. Every night, as she lay in bed, her mind would return to that moment, reliving it, reshaping it, wishing she could undo it. She believed that by holding on to her regret, she was somehow honoring what had happened, that letting go would mean she didn't care. But one evening, in the quiet of her room, she realized something profound. The past was no longer real. It existed only in her mind. And by clinging to it, she was choosing to suffer again and again. So she whispered, through tears, God, I release what I cannot change. And in that simple surrender, something inside her softened. The chains she had carried for so long began to fall away. You see, forgiveness is not about changing the past. It is about freeing yourself from it. And this applies not only to others, but to yourself. So many nights are lost, not because of what others have done to you, but because of what you refuse to forgive within yourself. The harsh words, the missed chances, the choices you wish you could undo. But listen closely. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to grow. And growth requires mistakes. It requires falling and rising again with a deeper understanding. God does not ask you to be flawless. God asks you to trust even in your imperfection. There is a gentle mercy woven into the fabric of existence, a grace that allows you to begin again moment by moment. But you must be willing to step into it. You must be willing to release the illusion that you are defined by your past, because you are not your past. Just as a river does not hold on to the water that has already passed, you are not meant to hold on to what is already gone. Life is always moving, always renewing itself. And when you resist that flow, when you try to anchor yourself to what has already been, you create suffering. But when you let go, even just a little, you begin to feel lighter, freer. And perhaps tonight, that is enough. Not a complete transformation, not a sudden awakening, but a small, quiet decision to release one burden you've been carrying. Maybe it is a regret. Maybe it is a fear. Maybe it is a story you keep telling yourself about who you are or who you are not. Whatever it is, you can place it gently in God's hands and say, I no longer need to carry this alone. There is something deeply comforting about that realization that you are not the sole architect of your life, that there is a greater intelligence, a divine presence guiding you even when you feel lost. And sometimes the very things you resist the most are the things that lead you exactly where you need to be. You may not understand it now, and that's okay. Faith is not about understanding everything. It is about trusting even when you don't. There is a verse that echoes softly through the hearts of those who are weary, a reminder that you are never abandoned, never forgotten. It speaks of a peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that does not depend on circumstances but flows from something far deeper. And that peace is available to you now. Not tomorrow, not when everything is perfect, but here, in this very moment. As you lie there, listening to the quiet rhythm of your breath, notice how life continues without your effort. Your lungs rise and fall. Your heart beats steadily. Your body knows how to rest. If only you allow it. So allow it. Let go of the need to control every thought, every outcome, every possibility. Let them drift like leaves carry. By a gentle stream, you do not need to follow them. You do not need to solve them. You only need to be here. And in this presence, something sacred begins to unfold. A stillness, a quiet knowing that you are held, that you are guided, that you are exactly where you are meant to be. Even if it doesn't feel like it, even if your mind still whispers doubts, even if your mind still whispers doubts, even if your mind still whispers doubts, even if your heart still carries a little weight, trust that something greater is at work. Trust that every moment is shaping you gently, perfectly, into who you are becoming. And as your thoughts begin to slow, as your body begins to soften, as the night wraps around you like a comforting embrace, remember this: you are not behind in life. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are simply unfolding. You are simply, and in that unfolding, there is beauty, there is purpose, there is divine timing. So rest, not because everything is finished, but because you trust that it will be. Rest, knowing that what is meant for you cannot miss you. Rest knowing that God is already working on what you cannot yet see, and as sleep gently finds its way to you, like a quiet blessing, hold on to this simple truth. You are carried even when you let go. You are guided even in the dark. And you are deeply, unconditionally at peace within God's plan. And as that peace begins to deepen, like a soft tide pulling you gently inward, there comes a moment where something within you loosens its grip even further, not because you forced it, but because you are finally beginning to see that there was never anything to hold on to in the first place. All this time you have been trying to secure yourself in a world that is constantly changing. You've been searching for certainty in things that were never meant to stay the same. Relationships shift, circumstances evolve, seasons come and go, and yet the mind resists. It whispers. It whispers. Make it permanent, make it safe, make it last forever. But life does not work that way. And perhaps that is not a flaw. Perhaps that is the design. There was once a man who feared losing everything he loved. So he held on tightly to people, to possessions, to moments. He tried to preserve them, to freeze them in time. But the tighter he held, the more anxious he became. Because deep down he knew nothing could truly be held forever. And one day, exhausted by his own fear, he sat quietly and watched the sunset. For the first time, he did not try to capture it or prolong it. He simply watched as the colors faded into darkness. And in that fleeting moment, he felt something unexpected. Peace! Because he realized the beauty of the sunset was not in its permanence, but in its passing. And so it is with your life. The reason you suffer is not because things change, that because you wish they wouldn't. You want joy without loss, love without vulnerability, life without uncertainty. But to live fully is to embrace the entire dance, not just the parts that feel comfortable. Even now, as you lie there in the quiet, notice how each breath comes and goes. You do not cling to the breath that has passed, nor do you fear the one that has not yet arrived. You trust the rhythm without even thinking about it. So why not trust life in the same way? Faith is not clinging to outcomes, it is surrendering to the flow. There is a divine intelligence moving through everything, an unseen harmony that connects all things. And when you begin to trust that harmony, something within you begins to relax. The need to control fades, the fear of the unknown softens, and you begin to move with life instead of against it. But this does not mean you will never feel fear again. It does not mean you will never face uncertainty or pain. It means that even in those moments, you remembered. That you are not alone. There is a presence, quiet, constant, watching over you. Call it God, call it the universe, call it the source of all things. It does not matter what name you give it. What matters is that you trust it. There was a time when you did not question life so much. As a child, you moved freely, laughed easily, slept deeply. You did not lie awake, worrying about tomorrow or replaying yesterday. You trusted without even knowing the word for it, and that trust still lives within you. It has not disappeared. It has only been covered by layers of fear, expectation, and conditioning. But tonight, as you gently peel those layers away, even just a little, you begin to reconnect with that original innocence, that quiet knowing that everything is okay. Even now, everything is okay. Even now, Everything is okay, not because your life is perfect, but because you are held within something far greater than your understanding. A divine presence that sees the whole picture, while you only see fragments. And isn't it exhausting trying to piece together a puzzle when you cannot see the full image? So perhaps you don't need to solve it tonight. Perhaps you can simply trust that the pieces are coming together exactly as they should. There is a story of a farmer who one day lost his horse. His neighbors came and said, "This is terrible." But the farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, bringing with it several wild horses. The neighbors said, "This is wonderful." And again the farmer replied, "Maybe." Later, his son tried to tame one of the wild horses and broke his leg. "This is terrible," they said. "Maybe," the farmer responded. Soon after, soldiers came to take young men to war, but his son was spared because of his injury. You see, what seems like misfortune today may reveal itself as a blessing tomorrow, and what feels like a blessing now may carry unseen challenges. But life is not asking you to judge every moment. It is asking you to trust it, and that trust is where peace lies. As your body begins to grow heavier, as your thoughts become softer, notice how the urgency to figure everything out begins to fade. You are not being asked to solve your entire life tonight. You are being invited to rest within it, to rest in the mystery, to rest in the unknown, to rest in the gentle understanding that you do not need to control the future, because the future is already being shaped by something far wiser than your fears. For something far wiser than your fears. And in that realization, there is a quiet kind of freedom. A freedom that does not depend on circumstances. A freedom that does not require answers. A freedom that simply says, "I trust." So let your mind slow down like a fading echo in the distance. Let your body sink deeper into stillness. Let the night carry you effortlessly into rest, because you are not separate from life. You are life, unfolding, breathing, moving exactly as it was meant to. And even in the moments when you feel uncertain, even when the path ahead is unclear, remember this gentle truth. Nothing that is meant for you will ever be lost. Nothing that is meant to find you will ever miss you. So release the need to chase, to force, to hold on. And instead, allow yourself to be carried by the quiet, steady flow of God's plan. Because in that surrender, there is peace. In that trust, there is rest. And in that stillness, you will find yourself gently drifting into a sleep that heals, restores, and reminds you that you are always exactly where you need to be. And as you drift even deeper, 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 now, as the edges of your thoughts begin to blur, there is one final illusion that gently asks to be released. The illusion that you are separate, that you are alone, that somehow you must walk this path by yourself. But listen very carefully. You have never been alone, not for a single moment. Even in your darkest nights, even in the sour amps, when your heart felt heavy and your mind refused to rest, there was a quiet presence beside you. Not loud, not demanding, but steady, patient, unwavering. A presence that did not judge your fears, did not rush your healing, but simply remained waiting for you to notice. And perhaps tonight, you are beginning to feel it. Not as a thought, but as a gentle stillness within your chest, a softness in your breath, a calm that doesn't need a reason to exist. This is what you've been searching for. Not answers, not control, not certainty, but connection. There was once a traveler who spent his entire life searching for meaning. He crossed oceans, climbed mountains, studied under great teachers, hoping that somewhere someone would give him the answer that would finally quiet his restless heart. But no matter where he went, the same unease followed him. Until one evening, exhausted and alone, he sat beneath a vast open sky. There were no distractions, no voices, no expectations, just silence. And in that silence, something shifted. He stopped searching. He stopped asking. He simply was. And in that moment, he realized what he had been seeking was never out there. It had always been within him, quietly waiting, beneath all the noise, all the striving, all the effort. You see, the peace you long for is not something you need to earn. It is not something you achieve after everything in your life is perfectly arranged. It is already here beneath the surface of your thoughts, beneath the layers of fear and doubt. But to feel it, you must be willing to let go completely. Not just of your worries, but of the idea that you are separate from the very life you are living. Because you are not an outsider looking in. You are part of the whole. Just as a wave is not separate from the ocean, you are not separate from the divine source that created you. The same force that moves the stars, that breathes life into the world, flows through you in every moment. And when you begin to trust that, truly trust it, something beautiful happens. The fear of the unknown begins to dissolve. The need to control begins to fade. And in its place, there is a quiet surrender, a deep, unshakable peace. Not because life has become predictable, but because you have realized you don't need it to be. Even now, as your body relaxes further, as your mind drifts like a feather in the night air, feel the gentle truth of this moment. You are safe. Not because nothing will ever go wrong, but because whatever comes, you will. Not face it alone. There is a wisdom guiding you, a love holding you, a presence walking with you, through every uncertainty, every transition, every unseen tomorrow. And perhaps that is enough. You don't need to see the entire path. You don't need to understand every twist and turn. You only need to trust the next step, and then the next. There is a quiet beauty in not knowing, a sacred mystery in allowing life to unfold without resistance. And when you embrace that mystery, when you stop trying to force clarity, you begin to rest in something far deeper than certainty. You begin to rest in faith. Faith that what is meant to be will be. Faith that even your struggles carry meaning. Faith that every delay, every detour, every unexpected turn is part of a greater unfolding you cannot yet fully see. And in that faith there is a softness, a gentleness that carries you effortlessly towards sleep. Let your thoughts fade now, like distant whispers dissolving into silence. Let your body sink, heavier, deeper, supported by the quiet embrace of the night. Let your breath guide you, slow, steady, calm. There is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to fix, nothing you need to figure out. Just be here, in this moment, held, guided, at peace. And if a thought arises, let it pass. And if a thought arises, let it pass. If a worry returns, gently release it. If your mind tries to pull you back into control, softly remind yourself, I trust. Because you do. Even if only a small part of you feels it, that is enough. That small seed of trust is all that is needed for peace to grow. and as sleep begins to take you, like a gentle tide pulling you into stillness. Carry this quiet knowing with you. You are not separate from life. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. You are part of something infinite, something loving, something divine. And in that truth, there is nothing to fear, only rest, only peace, only the quiet, sacred unfolding of a life that is being guided perfectly by hands far greater than your own. So let go completely now and drift gently into the deep healing stillness that has been waiting for you all along. And now, as everything you've heard gently settles into the quiet spaces of your heart, there is no need to hold on to every word, no need to remember every thought, because the truth is, what truly matters has already reached you, not through your mind, but through your being. All along, through every reflection, every story, every soft unraveling of illusion, you have been guided back to one simple, eternal truth. You are held, held, held in moments of confusion, held in moments of doubt, held even when you forget, even when you drift, even when you feel far away from peace. There has always been something greater carrying you, something patient, something loving, something divine. And perhaps now you can feel it more clearly, not as an idea, but as a quiet presence, wrapping around you like a gentle embrace. All the striving, all the overthinking, all the nights spent trying to solve life before allowing yourself to rest, they begin to fade now, because you are beginning to understand. You were never meant to carry it all alone. You were meant to trust that every unanswered question has its time, to trust that every delay has its purpose, to trust that even the parts of your life that feel uncertain are being shaped by a wisdom far beyond what you can see, and in that trust there is a peace so deep, so steady that nothing can truly disturb it. This is the peace that does not depend on outcomes. This is the peace that remains even in the unknown. This is the peace of surrender, the peace of faith, the peace of knowing that God's plan is always unfolding, even when you cannot yet understand it. So, as you rest now, as your body softens completely, as your mind drifts into stillness, let this be your quiet prayer, not spoken loudly, but felt gently within. God, I release what I cannot control. I trust what I cannot see. I surrender what I have been holding too tightly. And I rest, knowing you are guiding me. Let those words sink into you like a calm river flowing through your soul, washing away the weight you no longer need to carry. You don't have to chase peace anymore. You don't have to force sleep. You don't have to become anything other than what you already are in this moment, because in this moment, you are enough. In this moment, you are safe. In this moment, you are exactly where you are meant to be. And as the night gently carries you deeper into rest, into healing, into stillness, hold on to this final truth. Nothing that is meant for you will ever pass you by. Nothing that is meant to find you will ever be lost. And everything in your life is unfolding with a quiet, perfect purpose, guided by the loving hands of God. So sleep now peacefully, and trust that when you awaken, you will rise not just rested, but renewed, held, and gently guided forward, one step at a time, exactly as it was always meant to be. I think it is one of the most curious things about being human,
that we can love so deeply and yet lose what we love so completely. You see, there is a strange contradiction built into life itself. We are given hearts that can hold infinity and yet bodies that are bound to time. So when someone we love disappears from the visible world, the mind cries out, how can this be? How can love exist without the lover? And the more we think about it, the more unbearable it seems. Because you see, we've been trained to think of death as the opposite of life, rather than as part of it. Now, what I want to suggest is that perhaps we have it backwards. When you look at nature, at the falling leaves, at the tides that rise and withdraw, or the clouds that drift and vanish into air, you begin to sense that disappearance is not destruction. It is transformation, it is change, yes, but it is also continuation in another form. When a wave rises from the sea, we give it a name. We say, that one there, that's my wave. And then when it falls back into the ocean, we cry out, it's gone. But the wave was never separate from the sea. It was the sea all along, playing for a moment as that particular shape, that particular expression. In the same way, when someone dies, we are not witnessing the end of something that stood apart. We are witnessing the return of the wave into its source. But of course, that doesn't make the grief go away. You can understand this intellectually and still feel the pain of separation, because thought alone cannot hold what love holds. Love is not in the head. It's in the whole being, in the way you breathe, in the way you see the sky, in the way you remember their voice. So even when you understand that the wave returns to the sea, you miss the sound of it crashing on the shore. The mistake we make is to think that this ache is wrong, that it must be fixed, overcome, or transcended. But what if the ache is sacred? What if grief itself is love's way of staying connected? You see, grief is not a punishment for having loved. It is the proof that you did. It is love without an object, learning how to move through the invisible. When you weep, you are still in conversation with what you think you've lost. The tears are the words that love speaks when it can't find form. So there's no need to rush it or silence it. The pain is part of the unfolding. It's how life opens you, how it teaches the heart that love was never something you had, it was something you were. And this is a most difficult thing to accept, because we live in a culture that treats death as failure. We hide it, we deny it, we dress it up in euphemisms and ceremonies, all to make it seem less final. But there's something to be said for looking directly at it, for asking, what is it really? What is this thing that takes everyone and everything without exception? Well, if you watch carefully, you begin to see that death is not a thing at all. It's not an entity that comes and snatches life away. Death is simply the name we give to one half of a rhythm, the other half being birth. You can't have one without the other, just as you can't have up without down or front without back. Life and death are like the two sides of a coin. If you try to keep only one, you lose both. So when you lose someone, you are not losing a thing that has been taken. You are watching the dance of existence. The same motion that brought them into your arms is the motion that carried them out. And in that sense, the ending is as natural, as lawful, as necessary as the beginning. You see, we humans are uncomfortable with cycles. We prefer straight lines. We like to start somewhere, move forward, and reach a destination. But the universe doesn't move that way. The universe flows in circles, stars turn, seasons turn, atoms spin, your heart beats, everything that lives moves in rhythm. So when someone dies, what is really happening is a continuation of that rhythm beyond the limits of what you can see. Now you might say, but that's no comfort to me. I want them here. I want their face, their laugh, their warmth. And of course you do. Love always wants to hold. But notice something. Even that wanting is an expression of the very life that seems to have been lost. It is life trying to love itself through you. So rather than suppress it, watch it, let it flow. If you allow grief to be what it is, without trying to rush it, something begins to change. Slowly, quietly, you start to notice that your loved one has not vanished completely. They appear in your dreams, in certain songs, in the scent of the air at a particular hour. They appear in the way you speak, in the habits you inherited, in the compassion that grew out of your pain. In fact, everything that moves you deeply is, in some mysterious way, their echo. When you begin to see it that way, death stops being an erasure and becomes a translation. They are still here, but in another language, a language your soul understands, even when your mind does not. And this is where real understanding begins. When you see that nothing truly goes away, things only change their form. That's all. When a candle burns, the wax melts, the flame flickers, the smoke rises, and yet nothing has been lost. The energy simply transforms. Likewise, when a person leaves this world, their being transforms into patterns too subtle for the eye, but still present in the great fabric of existence. Their laughter may now be the wind through the trees, their kindness the warmth of a sunrise, their spirit the space between your thoughts. The mind will still protest. That's just imagination. But imagination, you see, is one of the ways life perceives itself. It is the bridge between the seen and the unseen. When you imagine your loved one smiling at you, that is life remembering itself through your form. That is the eternal whisper saying, we never truly parted. And perhaps that's what death really teaches us, that separation was always an illusion. The space between you and the one you love was never a distance. It was a kind of dance. Two expressions of the same energy, meeting for a moment, recognizing themselves in each other, and then moving on. You can't hold a dance in place, but you can join it. You can feel the rhythm that moves through every life, and see that even endings belong to it. In that way, grief is not the enemy of love, it is love in motion, love returning to its source. So the next time you feel the ache of loss, don't push it away. Listen to it. It's trying to show you that you and the one you love are not two separate candles, but two flames of the same fire. The forms may change, the light remains. Because what dies is not the being, but the boundary. And what remains is everything that boundary once contained. And perhaps the most loving thing you can do for someone who is gone is not to cling to the form they once took, but to live so fully that life itself continues to speak their name through you. Because in the end, the one you loved is not behind you, they are within you. The sea has not lost the wave. The sea is the wave. And that means, quite literally, you have never lost them. You have only lost the idea of where they end and where you begin. If you stay with this, if you really let grief do its work without resisting it, something extraordinary begins to happen. The pain, which once felt so sharp and unbearable, starts to open like a seed cracking under pressure. And from within that brokenness, something alive begins to grow. You start to sense a quiet stillness beneath all the noise, a kind of spaciousness in which both joy and sorrow can exist side by side. Now, you may not notice it at first. It's subtle. You find it between the tears, in the small silences when you're not struggling against what is. But it's there, that presence that doesn't come and go, that awareness that watches everything without judgment, and you begin to realize this is what you truly are. Not the one who grieves, not the one who suffers, but the space in which grief and suffering arise. And when you see that, you begin to understand that the person you lost was never outside of that space either. They were in it, of it, just as you are now. The form may have changed, but the essence remains untouched. The trouble is that our minds don't like this sort of talk. The mind says, no, that can't be right. They were here, and now they're gone. But you see, the mind only deals with forms. It can't grasp what has no boundary. The heart however, knows. The heart has always known. It beats to the rhythm of the whole universe. That's why you can feel someone you love, even across oceans, even after they've passed, because the heart isn't bound by distance. It speaks the language of connection, the same language the stars speak to the sea. But to hear it, you have to grow quiet. You have to let the noise settle. Modern life doesn't make that easy, does it? We're surrounded by distractions, screens, deadlines, endless noise. The moment silence appears, we panic. We rush to fill it, afraid of what it might reveal. But silence is not empty. Silence is full of everything you've ever wanted to know. It's where the truth waits patiently for you to listen, and the truth is this: nothing real can ever be lost. Only the illusions fall away. The roles, the bodies, the stories, they're like waves dancing on the surface. The deep ocean beneath never goes anywhere. Once you feel that, once you know it, not as an idea, but as an experience, the fear of death begins to dissolve, because you realize there's no such thing as gone. There is only change from visible to invisible, from sound to silence, from form to formlessness. And the one who perceives all this, the awareness itself, that has never changed. You see, the mystery of love and the mystery of death are really the same mystery. They both dissolve the boundaries of the self. When you fall in love, you forget yourself in another. When someone you love dies, you forget yourself in longing. In both cases, the you that is separate begins to disappear. And in that disappearance, something larger awakens the realization that what you called you was never alone, never separate, never apart. So grief, in its strange way, is a kind of initiation, a doorway through which the personal dissolves into the universal. It's not about letting go of the one you love. It's about realizing that there was never anyone to hold on to in the first place. Because love was never between you. It was within you. It was the very fabric of your being. And when you see this, you begin to love differently. You no longer love out of need or fear or longing. You love because that's what you are. You love without trying to possess. You love without trying to fix. You love as the sun loves simply by shining. That's what all the great mystics meant when they spoke of enlightenment. It's not about escaping the world or transcending emotion. It's about seeing that everything, even pain, even loss, is part of the same divine play, the same dance of the universe expressing itself through countless forms. Think of a symphony. Each note rises, trembles, and fades away. But it's never truly gone, because it remains within the music. Without the fading, there would be no melody. Without silence, no song. Death, too, is part of the rhythm, not a mistake, not a tragedy, but an essential movement in the grand harmony of being. You see, we spend so much of our lives resisting the natural flow. We fight change, we cling to what was, we try to freeze the moment, but the moment cannot be frozen, it is alive. And to live fully is to move with it, to trust it, to let it carry you the way a river carries a leaf. When you allow that, when you stop clinging to the shore, something incredible happens. The river that once frightened you becomes your home. You begin to see that it's not taking you anywhere you don't already belong. It's taking you deeper into what you've always been. Now, this doesn't mean that the pain disappears overnight. You may still wake up some mornings with that ache in your chest, missing their voice, their touch, their presence. That's all right. Don't try to get rid of it. Let it be there. Let it remind you that you are capable of great love. Let it soften you, make you gentle, humble, human, because through that softness, the divine breathes. You see, life is not asking you to forget. It's asking you to remember differently, not through clinging, but through understanding. To see that what you loved was never confined to that particular form, that it was the light behind the form. And that light, my friend, is eternal. Every time you laugh again, every time you notice the beauty of the world, every time you forgive someone or extend kindness, that's them living through you. You're continuing the story together, even if your roles have changed. Perhaps that's what heaven really means, not a place somewhere else, but a state of being where love and awareness are seen as one and the same. When you reach that realization, you no longer fear the cycle. Birth and death, joy and sorrow, presence and absence, they all begin to look like waves on the same sea. You stop asking, why did this happen? And start whispering, thank you for letting me feel this much. Because to love so deeply that it breaks you is to touch the infinite. It means you've lived. It means you've known the truth, if only for a moment that there was never a separation to begin with. So when you find yourself standing by the window, staring at the horizon, wondering if they can still see, you know that they can. Not as an observer out there, but as the seeing itself. You are their eyes now. You are their voice, their hands, their chance to keep loving this world. And perhaps that's why this video found you, to remind you that you were never left behind. You are life, carrying on its own eternal song. The ocean does not mourn the wave. It rises again. It always does. So rise gently, quietly, beautifully. Not to escape your grief, but to move with it, to let it transform you into what you already are, love made visible for a little while. And when your time comes to fall back into the sea, you will see it clearly. There was never any loss at all, only life, endlessly changing shape, endlessly beginning again. There is a strange feeling that follows us through life, even when we seem to have all the things we once wished for. You might notice it on quiet evenings, when everything is finally still, the bills are paid, the kitchen is clean, the lights are soft, and yet something inside you whispers, there must be more. It is not greed, not exactly. It is an ache, an almost sacred restlessness, as if the mind refuses to believe that satisfaction could ever be simple. We are taught from childhood that money is the measure of safety, that to be rich is to be free. But the odd thing is that very few people who are surrounded by abundance ever truly feel free. They are anxious about losing it, suspicious of those who want it, and haunted by the idea that it might one day stop flowing. So even when the river of wealth runs wide, they still feel thirsty. You see, money is not a thing we hold. It is a story we tell. A story about control, about certainty, about being on the right side of fate. But the story keeps changing, and we keep rewriting it. One day, you tell yourself that if you could only earn a little more, you'd finally relax. The next, you have more, and you find new ways to be tense. You upgrade the dream, not because you need to, but because you no longer know how to stop chasing. This is the subtle tragedy of modern life. You can have comfort without peace. You can have wealth without trust. You can have options and still be trapped. And you can spend your entire existence trying to feel what cannot be bought, the quiet assurance that you are already complete. It is curious that the richer a society becomes, the less satisfied its people seem to feel. We accumulate things faster than we can enjoy them. We rush to consume experiences like travelers who are afraid their passports will expire. Even leisure becomes a form of work. We must prove that we are happy, prove that we are fulfilled, prove that our success was not a mistake. And yet, the old problem persists. The feeling of lack. A man who owns a house may still lie awake worrying about losing it. A woman who finally earns her dream income may suddenly fear that it won't be enough next year. It is never the numbers in the bank that trouble us. It is the belief that we are still incomplete, that someone, somewhere, is ahead. But what does it mean to be rich? Is it to have more than others? Or is it to need less? You can only feel wealth by contrast. If everyone had $1 million, no one would feel rich. If no one had a home, even a single room would feel like a palace. Our sense of abundance is not determined by possession, but by perception, by the game of comparison we unconsciously play every day. The trouble with comparison is that it never ends. There will always be someone who has gone farther, who has achieved sooner, who seems to float through life with less friction than you. But you never see the whole story. You see the highlight reel, the house, the smile, the success, not the anxiety behind it. And so we keep reaching, we keep pushing, we keep moving the goalpost just beyond the horizon, because stopping feels dangerous, almost shameful, as though contentment were a kind of failure. But you cannot chase peace and catch it. You can only allow it. Money is the same. The more you treat it as something to trap, the faster it runs from you. Because money, like life itself, moves in cycles. It flows in, it flows out, it circulates. And when you grip it too tightly, you stop its rhythm. If you truly look, you'll notice that every major financial decision you've ever made was not just about money, it was about what money symbolized. Security, recognition, freedom, love, control. Every purchase, every job, every dream of someday was a coded way of saying, I want to feel safe. But the great paradox is that the moment you tie your safety to something that can fluctuate, you guarantee your insecurity. This is why even wealthy people rarely feel rich. They have built their peace on sand. The market shifts, the company falters, the economy trembles, and the heart trembles with it. But what if you discovered that the sense of richness you're longing for has nothing to do with the balance in your account and everything to do with your relationship to enoughness? Enough is a quiet word. It does not shout like success or sparkle like wealth. It whispers. It says, you may stop now. But the modern mind is deaf to that whisper, because stopping looks too much like losing. We have confused contentment with complacency. Yet the only way to ever feel truly rich is to recognize that you already possess the only wealth that matters, the capacity to be here now without needing the next thing to make it worthwhile. You may have noticed that the richest moments of your life were never the most expensive ones. They were the mornings when the sun touched your window at just the right angle, the laughter that cost nothing, the meal that tasted better because you had someone to share it with. These are not moments of scarcity. They are proof that wealth was never the issue. Attention was. Attention is the new currency of our age. What you give your focus to, you empower. If your attention is constantly orbiting what's missing, then even a fortune will feel fragile. But if your attention settles into what is already here, then even the simplest life will feel abundant. We often think money will finally make us present, that once the bills are gone, the debt erased, the worry silenced, then we will relax. But life has a strange sense of humor. It gives you peace the moment you stop waiting for peace to be purchased. The moment you stop making contentment conditional on external gain, you realize that freedom was never hiding in the bank. It was hiding in your breath. It is a peculiar madness to believe that the value of life depends on the size of one's savings. Yet most people spend their best years trading time, the one thing they can never recover, for figures that exist only as digital ghosts on a screen. The irony is exquisite. We sacrifice the living moment for symbols of potential moments. You do not live in the future that your money promises. You live here, in this pulse, in this breath, and when that breath is over, you cannot spend what you have stored. But the culture around us whispers endlessly, you must prepare, you must accumulate, you must secure yourself. We build whole identities on this premise. The worker becomes his salary, the entrepreneur becomes her valuation, the artist becomes the market's approval, and in the process, we forget the original reason we sought wealth in the first place, to be free to live. Freedom cannot be bought. It is a realization, not a transaction. You may have noticed that those who spend their lives chasing financial freedom rarely find it, because the chase becomes the prison. The moment they reach one target, another appears. They're like sailors who keep moving the island on the map, always rowing toward a shore that never existed. To understand this, you must first see that money is not evil, nor is it sacred. It is neutral, pure energy, pure potential. It becomes poison only when you project your fears and hopes upon it. When you treat it as the medicine for every insecurity, it amplifies the sickness. But when you treat it as a tool, a rhythm, a movement of life itself, it begins to flow naturally again. Most people do not have a money problem, they have a meaning problem. They believe that by accumulating enough, they will one day escape uncertainty. But uncertainty is not an obstacle, it is the very texture of existence. You cannot buy your way out of it. You can only dance with it. Think of the ocean. The waves rise and fall. No one wave lasts forever, yet the ocean remains whole. Money is like that. It rises and falls in the tides of your life. Some seasons bring abundance, others require trust, but both are necessary for the rhythm to stay alive. You cannot have the flow without the ebb. Yet our minds resist this natural movement. We want to lock the river in a vault. We build dams of worry, hoarding, and fear, and then we wonder why we no longer feel the joy of its movement. You might feel it too, that heavy sense that you can never rest, because if you rest, the flow will stop. But it doesn't. It only stops when you stop trusting it. There are people who have very little, yet move through life with quiet confidence. Their peace is not because they are ignorant of difficulty, but because they are intimate with it. They have learned that wealth does not guarantee security any more than poverty guarantees despair. What matters is the relationship not between you and your money, but between you and your own sense of enoughness. You may have enough and still feel poor because you have not learned to feel what you already possess. The mind is trained to seek, not to notice. It treats satisfaction as a sign to move the target farther. That is why the feeling of richness cannot arise from what you own. It arises from how deeply you allow yourself to be owned by this present moment. And that is the great secret. You cannot hold wealth, but wealth can hold you when you stop demanding that it make you feel safe. When you stop trying to make money your savior, you begin to see that life has already been carrying you all along. If you look closely, every moment of your life has been financed by something far deeper than currency, the sheer generosity of existence itself. The sunlight that costs nothing, the breath that renews itself, the people who appear when you least expect it. These are not transactions, they are testaments that abundance has always been the ground beneath your feet. The reason you never feel rich is not that you lack something material, but that you have mistaken the symbol of wealth for the experience of it. And until that illusion is seen through, you could fill every account you own and still wake in the night wondering what's missing. So, pause for a moment. Feel the air moving in and out. Notice that it does not charge rent for entry. Notice that the stars still shine whether your stocks go up or down. Notice that life, in its strange and quiet way, has never stopped providing what is essential. Perhaps that is where real richness begins, in remembering that you were never meant to feel rich by having more, but by realizing that you are already part of something that cannot be owned. At some point, we must ask ourselves what it truly means to have enough. The question sounds simple, almost childish, but it hides the key to our deepest confusion. Enough is not a number, it is a relationship. You cannot measure it with a calculator because it depends on something that cannot be counted, the quality of your awareness. You see, life has never been about accumulation. It has always been about participation. When you are fully participating in the dance of existence, wealth is irrelevant. Whether you are sitting in a palace or beneath a tree, the sense of completeness comes from the same place, the unbroken presence of consciousness itself. But when you forget that, When you identify only with the fragments you can own or display, you feel divided from life, and the divided self can never feel rich. Consider for a moment how the idea of money arose. Once, there was only exchange. A fisherman traded his catch for the farmer's grain. The potter gave a bowl for a loaf of bread. It was a rhythm of giving and receiving, balanced by trust. But as soon as we invented symbolic wealth, the symbol became more important than the exchange. The coin replaced the conversation. The note replaced the handshake. We began to value not the act of giving, but the accumulation of the tokens that represented it. And so humanity found itself in an odd paradox. We created money to make life easier, but then made life revolve around money. We built systems that reward hoarding instead of sharing, growth instead of sufficiency, profit instead of peace. And yet the truth has not changed. You cannot take a single cent with you when you go. The wealth that truly matters is the kind you can still feel when everything else is gone. When you look around, you may notice that people often confuse abundance with excess. Abundance is the experience of fullness. Excess is the refusal to stop. Abundance nourishes, excess intoxicates. One expands your awareness, the other narrows it until you can no longer taste what you consume. A man in a small home can live abundantly if his heart is spacious. A man in a mansion can live in poverty if his soul is cramped by fear. But the problem is not greed, not really. It is confusion. We have mistaken the visible symbols of wealth for the invisible feeling of wholeness they were meant to point toward. And so we keep grasping for more, like a person trying to hold sunlight in their hands. Real richness begins the moment you stop trying to store light and start learning to see it. To feel rich is to recognize that the miracle is not that you possess things, but that things exist at all. That you are here, breathing, conscious, surrounded by textures and sounds and colors that no amount of currency could ever recreate. Look closely at the smallest details, the way the steam curls from your morning tea, the quiet rhythm of your footsteps on the floor, the warmth of someone's voice saying your name. These are not luxuries. These are wealth, but because we are taught to think of life as a ledger, we keep translating these moments into costs and gains. How much did it take? What did I earn? What did I lose? As long as the mind is caught in that arithmetic, it cannot see the truth that the value of a moment is not in what it costs, but in how deeply it is lived. You can spend your entire life chasing security and die without ever feeling safe, or you can discover here and now that safety is not the absence of risk, but the willingness to be present with it. This is why the truly wealthy are not those who have conquered uncertainty, but those who have made peace with it. They understand that life is not meant to be controlled, but experienced. The richest people in spirit are not those who hold everything tightly, but those who have learned to let everything go again and again without losing the capacity to trust. There is a freedom that appears only when you no longer demand that the world guarantee you anything. It is the freedom of being able to breathe without bargaining. The freedom of knowing that your worth does not rise and fall with the market or with the approval of others. When you realize this, something subtle shifts. The pursuit of wealth turns inward. You begin to invest, not in possessions, but in perception. You become interested in the quality of your attention, how present you are when you speak, how open you are when you listen, how generous you are when you act. That is the real portfolio of the spirit. You see, all along, life has been offering you dividends of awareness. Every challenge, every failure, every success, all of it has been teaching you how to wake up. But you cannot cash those lessons in a bank. Their value is in their transformation. And so the question is not how to make more, but how to mean more. How to let your actions carry the weight of awareness. How to allow even the simplest gesture, a smile, a meal, a moment of silence, to become a declaration of gratitude for the wealth that is already surrounding you. People often ask, but what about ambition? Should I not strive? Of course you should strive, but know what you are striving for. There is nothing wrong with earning money, creating art, or building a company. What matters is whether your work is an expression of love or a performance of fear. When it comes from love, it expands you. When it comes from fear, it drains you. A man who works from love is not working for security. He is working because he is alive. He moves with the current of life instead of against it. He understands that what he creates is not for possession, but participation. The reward is not the result, but the doing. And when you truly work in that spirit, money ceases to be an obsession and becomes a natural byproduct of energy well spent. It flows to you not as proof of worth, but as a reflection of alignment. The difficulty, of course, is that we are surrounded by noise, a culture built on convincing us that we are always one purchase away from happiness. Every advertisement whispers the same sermon. You are not enough, but we can sell you the missing piece. And because we are tired, uncertain, and hungry for relief, we believe it. We keep feeding a hunger that cannot be satisfied, because it is not physical, it is spiritual. To be spiritually hungry is not wrong. It is the first step toward awakening. But to confuse spiritual hunger with material lack is to wander forever. The moment you understand that what you crave is not more, but meaning, everything changes. You stop trying to fill the silence with noise or the stillness with motion. You begin to see that the discomfort of not enough is simply the invitation to meet yourself more deeply. It is not a curse, but a doorway. The moment you stop running from it, it opens. To feel rich, then, is to return to that inner stillness and find that you have never truly been poor. That the wealth you sought outside was always an echo of the abundance within. You realize that your entire life has been funded by something infinite, the same mystery that animates the trees, the rivers, the stars. It is a strange discovery to make because it dissolves the game entirely. You can still earn, still build, still plan for the future, but now you do it with lightness. You are no longer trying to prove your worth, you are simply expressing it. The anxiety of comparison fades, the compulsion to outdo disappears. What remains is participation, a pure willingness to live. And when you live like that, money becomes what it was meant to be, a servant, not a master. It moves through you as easily as breath, supporting what needs to unfold, then leaving when it is time. You trust that it will return when it is needed, because you are no longer clinging to its form. You are rooted in the deeper flow beneath it, the pulse of life itself. Imagine for a moment that you were suddenly invisible to society. No one could see your possessions, your titles, or your success. What would remain of you then? That remainder, the essence that cannot be measured or marketed, that is your true wealth. Everything else is temporary. There will come a day when your last transaction is complete, your last ambition satisfied, your last coin spent. And in that moment, all that will matter is whether you have learned how to be rich in presence, whether you can meet the final silence with gratitude instead of fear. If you have lived in constant hunger for more, death will feel like theft. But if you have lived in awareness of enough, death will feel like completion. The world will always offer you reasons to worry. The market will fall, prices will rise, the future will tremble. But the one thing that cannot be shaken is the realization that wealth was never outside you. It was the consciousness through which you perceived the world. It was the gratitude that transformed necessity into blessing, repetition into ritual, ordinary life into sacredness. You are not poor because you lack things. You are poor only when you forget how to see. So learn to see again. See the way the morning light filters through the curtain. See the faces of those you love. See the fleeting moments that slip between your plans. They are all pieces of gold scattered freely across the day. You don't have to own them, you only have to notice them. One day, you will look back and realize that the moments you thought were small were the richest of all. That the peace you chased through decades of work was already waiting for you, quietly, in the pause between breaths. To feel rich is not to escape life's uncertainty, but to bow to it. To say yes to each wave as it comes, and yes again when it goes. To know that what is yours will always find its way to you, because you are already part of the same current that carries everything else. And when that realization settles in your bones, you no longer ask, "Do I have enough?" You simply whisper, "I am enough." That is where the chase ends. That is where wealth begins. You know, there's a peculiar kind of exhaustion that settles into a person, and it has nothing to do with how much sleep you've had or how hard you've worked during the day. It's deeper than that. It's the exhaustion that comes from looking at your life, at all the things you do, all the things you're supposed to care about, and finding yourself asking that most dangerous of questions: what's the point of any of this? Now, this isn't a question that announces itself with trumpets. It doesn't arrive as a dramatic crisis, though sometimes it can. More often, it seeps in quietly, like water finding its way through the smallest cracks. You're going through your routine, doing what you've always done, and suddenly you notice that the meaning has leaked out of everything. The things that used to matter, the goals that used to pull you forward, they're still there, but they've become strangely weightless, hollow. You go through the motions because, well, what else would you do? But the felt sense of purpose, that vital energy that makes it all seem worthwhile, has simply evaporated. And here's what makes it so disorienting. You look around and everyone else seems to be managing just fine. They're excited about their projects, their relationships, their plans for the future. They talk about their goals with genuine enthusiasm, as if these things really matter, as if they've found some secret you somehow missed. And you wonder, am I broken? Have I seen through something I wasn't supposed to see through? Or have I simply fallen into some kind of depression, some chemical imbalance that's stolen my ability to care? The feeling often starts with the big things. You think about your career, and you realize you're climbing a ladder that doesn't actually lead anywhere you want to go. Or perhaps it does lead somewhere. But when you imagine arriving at that destination, you can't find any real satisfaction in the image. You'll have the title, the salary, the recognition, and then what? More of the same, just at a higher altitude. You see your colleagues who've made it to where you're heading, and they don't seem any more fulfilled than you are. They've just gotten better at hiding it. Or perhaps they've stopped asking the question altogether. Then it spreads to the smaller things, the daily activities that are supposed to add texture and meaning to life. Hobbies feel like elaborate distractions. Entertainment becomes a way to fill time rather than something genuinely enjoyable. Even relationships can start to feel like performances, roles you're playing, because that's what people do. You love your family, your friends, but there's this strange distance, as if you're watching yourself interact with them from somewhere far away, going through the appropriate emotional responses without really feeling them fully. And the future, the future becomes particularly problematic because our entire lives are organized around the future, aren't they? We're always working towards something, saving for something, preparing for something. But when everything feels pointless, the future collapses into an endless repetition of the same empty present. You'll wake up tomorrow, go through your routine, have your experiences, go to sleep, and then do it all again and again and again. For what? To survive so you can continue surviving? To be happy when happiness itself has started to feel like just another item on an impossible checklist? Now, when this feeling arrives, people typically respond in one of several ways, and none of them quite work.
Before we continue, many of you have been asking for something longer, something with actual practices you can use in daily life. So check out the 3-hour audiobook that takes everything we explore in these videos and gives you the tools to actually work with it. Because here's the thing, intellectual understanding without practical application just keeps you spinning in your head. You need both, the insight and the practice, the philosophy and the daily work that makes it real. This audiobook gives you that. 3 hours of deep wisdom with practices built in, so you're not just thinking differently, you're living differently. If you're serious about changing how you experience your life, the link is in the description below. Now, let's continue.
The first response is to try harder. You think, well, perhaps I just need to find the right goal, the right purpose. So you look around for something that might fill this void. Maybe it's a new career path, something more meaningful, more aligned with your values. Maybe it's a creative project, something that will express your authentic self. Maybe it's a relationship, a person who will make everything feel worthwhile again. Or perhaps it's a cause, something bigger than yourself that you can dedicate your energy to. And so you pursue these things with a kind of desperate intensity. You throw yourself into the new job, the new hobby, the new relationship. And for a while, it works. There's excitement, novelty, the feeling that, yes, this is it, I've found what was missing. But then, slowly or suddenly, that feeling fades. The new job becomes just another job. The creative project becomes another obligation. The relationship settles into routine. The cause reveals its limitations and contradictions. And you're back where you started, only now with the added burden of knowing that even when you find what you're looking for, it doesn't actually solve the problem. The second response is to try to think your way out of it. You read philosophy, psychology, self-help books. You're looking for the right perspective, the right framework that will make everything make sense again. And there's some value in this, certainly. Understanding can be helpful. But you notice something peculiar happens. You can understand intellectually that life has meaning. You can follow the arguments, agree with the conclusions, and yet the feeling of pointlessness remains untouched. It's as if there are two separate tracks running in you. One track knows all the right answers, can articulate why life matters, why your actions have significance. The other track, the one you actually live from, remains unconvinced, unmoved. Some people try to simply override the feeling. They commit to a philosophy or a belief system that tells them what matters, and they force themselves to care about those things. They create structure, discipline, routines. They tell themselves that meaning is something you create through commitment and action, not something you feel. And this can work for a time. You can function quite well, actually, by simply deciding that certain things matter and acting accordingly, regardless of how you feel about it. But there's an exhaustion in this approach, isn't there? A constant effort of will. And every now and then, in the quiet moments, the question returns, but why am I doing this? What's the point of forcing myself to care about things I don't actually care about? Then there's the root of distraction, which is perhaps the most common response of all. You keep yourself busy, entertained, stimulated. You fill every moment with activity, with media, with social interaction, with anything that keeps the question at bay. And modern life makes this remarkably easy. There's always something to watch, something to scroll through, something to occupy your attention. You can go days, weeks, even months, without ever sitting still long enough for the feeling to fully surface. But it's there, isn't it? Underneath everything. And the moments when it breaks through, those moments become increasingly uncomfortable, increasingly difficult to bear. Some people turn to pleasure, to sensation. They pursue experiences that make them feel alive, even temporarily. Adventure, romance, substances, risk. anything that creates intensity, that cuts through the numbness. And there's a logic to this. If nothing matters, then at least you can feel something, anything. The problem is that pleasure has this diminishing return. What once thrilled you becomes ordinary. You need more intensity, more novelty, more stimulation to achieve the same effect. And eventually you realize you're running faster and faster just to stay in the same place, still feeling that underlying emptiness. And then there's the philosophical response, the one that says, well, if nothing matters, then I'm free. If there's no inherent meaning, no cosmic purpose, then I can do whatever I want. This is the existentialist position. And there's something appealing about it. It sounds liberating. But notice what actually happens when you try to live from this place. The freedom feels more like abandonment than liberation. Yes, you can do whatever you want, but what do you want? Without any felt sense of what matters, freedom becomes a kind of paralysis. Every option is equally meaningless, which means there's no real basis for choosing one thing over another. What makes this whole experience particularly isolating is that it's so difficult to talk about. When you try to explain it to someone, they often respond with solutions, with suggestions, with reassurance. Have you tried exercise, therapy? Maybe you need a vacation. Maybe you're depressed and should consider medication. And these might all be helpful things, genuinely. But they miss the point, don't they? Because what you're experiencing isn't a problem to be solved. It's more like a question that won't go away, a seeing that can't be unseen. Or people will try to inspire you. They'll remind you of all the good things in your life, all the reasons you have to be grateful, all the people who love you, all the opportunities available to you. And you know they're right. Objectively, logically, you know you have a good life, perhaps even a great life. But that knowledge doesn't touch the feeling. It's like someone describing a delicious meal to you when you've lost your sense of taste. Yes, I understand this is supposed to be good, but I can't actually taste it. Sometimes the feeling becomes so pervasive that you start to wonder if this is just what life is, and everyone else is simply better at pretending otherwise. Maybe all of human civilization is just an elaborate distraction from this fundamental emptiness. We create culture, art, science, religion, relationships, all these complex systems and structures, not because they're inherently meaningful, but because we need to give ourselves something to do, some way to avoid facing the void at the center of everything. And there's a particularly modern dimension to this experience. Because we live in a time of unprecedented material comfort and opportunity, at least for many of us, our ancestors were too busy surviving to ask whether life had a point. The question of meaning was answered by necessity. You worked to eat, you had children to continue the family line, you participated in your community because you needed each other to survive. Purpose was built into the structure of life itself. But now, for many of us, survival is relatively secure. We have time, resources, options. We're told we can be anything, do anything, create our own meaning. And this freedom, this abundance of choice, it can actually make the question of pointlessness more acute. Because when you can do anything, the question becomes, yes, but what should I do? And who's to say? On what basis do you choose? What makes one path more meaningful than another when all paths are equally available and equally optional? You see this especially in the realm of work. Previous generations had roles, vocations, callings. You were a farmer because your family were farmers. You were a craftsman because that's what your community needed. Your work was woven into a larger social fabric that gave it context and significance. But now, work is supposed to be a form of self-expression, a source of personal fulfillment. You're supposed to find your passion, follow your purpose, make a difference. And if you don't feel passionate, if you don't feel fulfilled, if you're not making a difference, well, that's a personal failure, isn't it? You failed to find the meaningful work that was supposedly there waiting for you. The same pattern appears in relationships. They're supposed to complete you, make you happy, give your life meaning. Your partner is supposed to be your soulmate, your best friend, your source of passion and comfort and growth all at once. And if your relationship doesn't provide all these things, if it feels more like comfortable companionship than cosmic significance, you wonder if you're missing something, if you're with the wrong person, if real love would feel different. Even leisure time becomes fraught. You're supposed to have hobbies that enrich you, experiences that broaden you, travels that transform you. Every moment is supposed to be optimized, meaningful, worthwhile. And so when you find yourself spending your free time just, sitting there, or scrolling mindlessly, or doing something that doesn't improve you or fulfill you, there's this nagging sense of waste, of failure, of life slipping through your fingers while you do nothing important with it. And underneath all of this, underneath all these attempts to find meaning or create meaning or convince yourself that meaning exists, there's a simpler, more fundamental question. The question isn't really, what's the point of this particular activity or that particular goal? The question is, what's the point of me? Why am I here? What is this strange fact of my existence for? I didn't choose to be born. I didn't ask for consciousness, for this awareness that can turn back on itself and question its own purpose. And yet here I am, thrown into existence, expected to figure out what to do with it, expected to care about it, expected to find it meaningful. When you really sit with this, when you let yourself feel the full weight of it, there's a kind of vertigo, because you realize that you are this temporary, fragile, utterly contingent thing. You appeared out of nothing, you return to nothing, and in between, you're supposed to somehow make it all matter. You're supposed to care deeply about things that, in the grand scheme of the universe, don't register at all. The universe doesn't care if you're happy or sad, successful or unsuccessful, if you fulfill your potential or waste your life. It simply doesn't care. It's indifferent. And you're just a brief ripple in an incomprehensibly vast process that was unfolding long before you arrived and will continue long after you're gone. Now, you might think this recognition would make things worse, and often it does, at first, because it seems to confirm the feeling of pointlessness. If nothing matters in any ultimate sense, if the universe is indifferent, if we're all just temporary patterns of matter and energy that will eventually dissipate, then what's the point of anything? Why not just give up? Why not just surrender to the meaninglessness of it all? But here's where something interesting happens, if you stay with it long enough, because there's something else underneath the pointlessness, underneath the exhaustion and the emptiness and the endless questioning. There's a deeper current that you can only feel when you stop trying so hard to find meaning or create meaning or prove that meaning exists. And that's what we need to look at. Not as another solution, not as another answer to the question of pointlessness, but as a different way of being with the question itself. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really consider it. When you say everything feels pointless, what is it that's doing the feeling? Who is it that's noticing the pointlessness? There's something here, isn't there? Something present, something aware. And that something, that awareness, it doesn't feel pointless. The awareness itself, the consciousness that's watching all of this, questioning all of this, it's not empty. It's actually quite full, quite alive, quite present. You see, we've gotten ourselves into a very peculiar bind. We've confused the meaning of our lives with the meaning of our thoughts about our lives. We think that life feels pointless because we can't think of a point to it. But life isn't something you think. Life is something you are. And the being of life, the actual living presence of existence, it doesn't require a point. It doesn't need justification. It doesn't need to prove its worth. It simply is, And the isness of it, the sheer fact of being alive and aware, that's not pointless. That's not empty. That's the most fundamental fullness there is. Now, I know this might sound like semantic games, like I'm just playing with words, but stay with me, because something important is happening here. When you look for the point of life, you're looking in the wrong direction. You're looking forward into the future, towards some goal or purpose or destination that will make everything worthwhile. But life isn't happening in the future. Life is happening now. This moment, this breath, this sensation of being present and aware, this is life. Not the story about life, not the meaning of life, but life itself. And when you really pay attention to life itself, when you stop for a moment asking what it's for and simply notice what it is, something shifts. Because life, the actual immediate experience of being alive, it's extraordinary. Not because it's always pleasant or comfortable or fulfilling, but because it's here at all. The fact that there is something rather than nothing, the fact that you exist to experience anything whatsoever, this is, when you think about it, completely miraculous. You see, the question of pointlessness arises from a very specific assumption, an assumption we rarely examine. The assumption is that things need to have a point, that existence requires justification, that being alive is only worthwhile if it's for something. But where did this assumption come from? Who told you that your life needs a purpose beyond itself? Who said that the experience of existing isn't enough, that it needs to lead somewhere, accomplish something, mean something beyond what it already is? This is what I call the trap of instrumentality. We've learned to see everything as a means to an end. You go to school so you can get a job. You get a job so you can make money. You make money so you can be secure. You're secure so you can be happy. You're happy so you can, well, what? Live a meaningful life? And what's a meaningful life? One that has a point. And what's the point? To be happy. And around we go, each thing justified by the next thing, but never arriving at anything that's valuable in itself. But life itself, the actual living of it, isn't an instrument. It's not a means to something else. It's the thing itself. When you eat a delicious meal, you don't eat it in order to be full. Being full is part of the experience, certainly. But the point of eating isn't to arrive at fullness and then be done with it. The point of eating, if we must use that word, is the eating, the tasting, the savoring, the actual experience of it. And life is like this. The point of life isn't to arrive at some future state where you can finally say, now it all makes sense. Now it's been worthwhile. The point of life, if there is one, is the living of it right here, right now. You know what happens when you listen to music? You don't listen to a symphony in order to reach the final note. The final note isn't the point. If it were, the best music would be the shortest music. Just play that last note and be done with it. But that's absurd, isn't it? The point of music is the music itself, the unfolding of sound in time, the experience of listening moment by moment. And life is like this too. It's not going anywhere. There's no destination you're trying to reach where you can finally rest and say, there, I've successfully lived. Life is what's happening along the way, in the supposed in-between times that we think don't count. Now, I can almost hear the objection forming. You're thinking, yes, but that's all well and good for moments of pleasure or beauty or comfort. But what about the rest of it? What about the suffering, the boredom, the pain, the endless, tedious, grinding through days that feel empty and exhausting? Are you telling me those have a point simply because they're happening? That seems like a rather cruel joke. And you're right to push back on that, because I'm not suggesting that suffering is good or that you should simply accept everything that happens as equally wonderful. But I am suggesting something else. I'm suggesting that the feeling of pointlessness, the exhaustion, the sense that nothing matters, this isn't actually caused by your circumstances. It's caused by the way you're relating to your circumstances, by the constant background assumption that life should be different than it is, that you should be different than you are, that there's somewhere else you're supposed to be, or something else you're supposed to be doing. Think about what happens when you're deeply engaged in something. Not forcing yourself to be engaged, not trying to care, but genuinely absorbed. Maybe you're having a conversation that fascinates you, or you're working on a problem that captures your full attention, or you're watching a sunset, or playing with a child, or reading something that speaks to you. In those moments, do you stop and ask, but what's the point of this? No, you don't, because the question doesn't arise. The experience itself is sufficient. It doesn't need justification because you're not separate from it, analyzing it, judging it. You're simply in it, part of it, flowing with it. The feeling of pointlessness, then, isn't about your life lacking meaning. It's about you standing outside your life, observing it, judging it, constantly evaluating whether it measures up to some imagined standard of what life should be. And from that position, of course, everything feels empty, because you've split yourself in two. There's the life that's happening, and then there's you, the observer, standing apart from it, asking if it's good enough, meaningful enough, worthwhile enough. And that observer, that judge, it's never satisfied, because satisfaction isn't its function. Its function is to evaluate, to compare, to find lacking. But who is this observer? Who is this judge that stands apart from life evaluating it? When you look closely, when you really try to find this separate self that's supposedly outside looking in, you can't find it. There's just experience happening, awareness of experience happening, but no separate entity apart from it all. The observer is itself part of the observed. The thinker of thoughts is just another thought. The self that seems to stand outside your life, questioning its meaning, is itself part of the life it's questioning. And this is where everything inverts. Because the search for meaning, the need to find a point to it all, this is itself the problem. Not because meaning doesn't exist, but because you're looking for it in the wrong way. You're looking for it as if meaning is something separate from experience, something that could be added to life to make it worthwhile. But meaning isn't separate from experience. Meaning is the texture of experience itself when you're fully present to it, when you're not busy evaluating it or wishing it were different. Let me put it another way. When you ask, what's the point? You're really asking, why should I care about this? And underneath that question is an assumption that you're separate from this, that you're a subject confronted with an object world that may or may not be worth your investment. But the actual truth of your experience, when you look at it directly, is that there's no such separation. You are not in the world encountering experiences that may or may not be meaningful. You are the world experiencing itself, knowing itself in this particular form, in this particular moment. The pointlessness you feel then is the exhaustion of maintaining this fiction of separation. It's tiring, isn't it? This constant evaluation, this endless questioning, this need to justify your existence. And the exhaustion itself is a kind of signal, a message from your deeper intelligence saying, stop, this isn't working, there's another way. What's the other way? It's the way of participation rather than observation. Instead of standing apart from your life asking what it means, you become your life, fully, completely. Not by forcing yourself to care about things you don't care about, but by dropping the question of whether you should care and simply allowing yourself to be present to what is. And here's the paradox. When you stop looking for meaning, when you stop demanding that life justify itself to you, meaning appears, not as something added to experience, but as the natural flavor of experience when you're not constantly filtering it through judgment and evaluation. A conversation becomes meaningful not because it's leading somewhere or accomplishing something, but because you're actually having it, actually listening, actually present. Work becomes meaningful not because it's fulfilling some grand purpose, but because you're actually doing it, bringing your full attention to it, engaging with it as it is, rather than as you think it should be. This is what the old Zen masters meant when they said that before enlightenment you chop wood and carry water, and after enlightenment you chop wood and carry water. The actions are the same, but the relationship to them is completely different. You're no longer standing outside your life wishing it were different, waiting for the meaningful part to begin. You're in your life as your life, and the question of meaning or pointlessness simply doesn't arise in the same way. Now, this doesn't mean that everything suddenly becomes wonderful, or that you're happy all the time, or that you stop wanting things to change. You'll still have preferences, still work toward goals, still hope for certain outcomes rather than others. But it's all much lighter, much less burdened, because you're not freighting every moment with this impossible demand that it justify your existence. You can want things without needing them to make your life meaningful. You can work toward goals without needing to achieve them to prove you're worthwhile. You can fail, struggle, suffer even, without it meaning that your life is pointless. Because here's what we've forgotten. Life doesn't need a point. That's not a depressing realization. It's actually deeply liberating. Because if life doesn't need a point, then you are free. Free from the crushing burden of having to make your life mean something. Free from the constant anxiety that you're not doing enough, not being enough, not living right. Free to simply be here, alive, aware, experiencing whatever is arising in this moment without needing it to be anything more than what it is. And in that freedom, something wonderful happens. The world becomes interesting again. Not because you've found the answer to the question of meaning, but because you've stopped asking the question in that desperate, grasping way. You start to notice things again. The quality of light in the morning, the taste of your coffee, the feeling of breath moving in your body, the strange miracle of being able to think thoughts and form words and communicate with other beings who are also somehow alive and aware. None of this needs to be for anything. It's enough that it is. You see, the universe, this whole vast unfolding process, it's not going anywhere. There's no destination it's trying to reach, no purpose it's trying to fulfill. It's simply playing itself out, moment by moment, in an infinite variety of forms. And you are one of those forms. You're what the universe is doing right here, right now, in this particular location. You're not in the universe having an experience. You are the universe having an experience of itself. And from this perspective, the question, what's the point, is like a wave asking, what's the point of being a wave? The wave isn't separate from the ocean, trying to justify its existence. The wave is what the ocean is doing in that moment. It arises, it moves, it falls, and then the water that formed the wave becomes part of the next wave. Nothing is lost. Nothing is wasted. Nothing needs to be for anything other than what it is. This is what the mystics have always tried to point to. Not a belief system you need to adopt, not a philosophy you need to follow, but a direct recognition of what you actually are underneath all the concepts and stories and judgments. You are not a separate self trying to find meaning in a meaningless universe. You are the universe meaning itself, knowing itself, experiencing itself in this particular form. And when that recognition really lands, not as an idea, but as a felt sense, everything changes and nothing changes. You still have your life, your responsibilities, your struggles and joys and mundane routines, but you're not carrying them in the same way. There's a lightness, a playfulness even, because you're not taking yourself quite so seriously anymore. You see, through the game of self, the story of me trying to make my life meaningful, trying to justify my existence, you realize you don't need to justify your existence. Your existence justifies itself simply by being. So what do you do with this? How do you live from this recognition? Well, you don't really do anything with it, because it's not a technique or a practice or a method. It's more like a remembering, a coming back to something you've always known but forgotten. And the forgetting is natural, part of the game. You'll forget and remember, probably for the rest of your life. But each time you remember, it gets a little easier, a little more familiar. And in the meantime, you just live. You do what needs doing, what calls to you, what appears in front of you. Not because it's meaningful, not because it's the right thing to do, not because it will make your life worthwhile, but simply because you're alive. And this is what being alive looks like. Sometimes it looks like work, sometimes like play, sometimes like suffering, sometimes like joy. All of it is life. All of it is the universe exploring itself through your form. The feeling of pointlessness, then, isn't your enemy. It's not a problem to be solved or a state to escape from. It's an invitation, a doorway, a call to wake up from the dream of separation, the exhausting fiction that you're a separate self trying to make a separate life meaningful. When everything feels pointless, that's life saying, stop trying so hard. Stop demanding that I be something I'm not. Just be here. Just be present. Just let yourself live without needing it to mean anything more than what it is. And that's enough. In fact, it's everything. Not because it's profound or spiritual or enlightened, but because it's actual. It's real. It's what's here when you stop looking somewhere else for something else that will finally make everything worthwhile. The whole search for meaning was a distraction from the only thing that's ever been real, which is this, right here, right now. Your life, exactly as it is, in all its ordinariness and extraordinariness, its beauty and its plainness, its joy and its sorrow. All of it, the whole catastrophe, as Zorba called it. Not meaningful or meaningless, but simply, wonderfully, mysteriously alive. There are moments in life when words strike us with an almost eerie precision, as if they were spoken directly to us and no one else. You may have passed over the very same words before, perhaps even laughed at them or found them unremarkable. And yet suddenly, in the middle of your own struggles, they arrive with such clarity and such force that they feel destined, inevitable, as though the universe itself has conspired to deliver them into your hands. This is the mystery of timing, the way a message finds you not when you demand it, but when you are prepared to receive it. We often imagine that wisdom can be gathered like coins, that if we read enough, listen enough, think enough, we will finally hold it in our grasp. But real wisdom is slippery. It is not simply a collection of ideas to be memorized and filed away. It is a recognition, a shift of perspective, a kind of remembering of what you have always known deep down. And recognition cannot be forced. You may search feverishly, read endlessly, strain with every ounce of effort, but nothing happens until the moment ripens. Like fruit that will not sweeten before its season, wisdom will not open until you are ready. Consider how often this has been true in your own life. Perhaps someone once told you something you dismissed outright, only to find years later that the very same words became the key to your freedom. Or perhaps a book sat on your shelf, forgotten, until one day you picked it up and suddenly every page seemed to speak directly to your heart. The words did not change, you did. Your life unfolded through joys and sorrows, through mistakes and triumphs, and at last you arrived at the moment when those words could land. The message was waiting all along, but you had to live enough to hear it. This is why the message you are hearing now feels as though it was meant for you. Not because someone has tailored it, not because fate has singled you out, but because your life has ripened to the point where it resonates. It is not so much that the message found you, but that you grew into it. And in that growing, the meeting feels inevitable. Just as the river winding through valleys seems destined to meet the sea, so your path has brought you to this very moment where these words and your awareness converge. We do not like to think of life this way because it challenges the notion that we are in complete control. We imagine that we chart our own course, that growth is something we can schedule and demand. But notice how your greatest realizations have come to you. Did they not often arrive unexpectedly, as gifts you could not have summoned. The most profound lessons tend to come uninvited, often in moments of despair or confusion, when you were forced to drop your defenses and listen with a new kind of openness. It is not that suffering is desirable, but that it humbles us, softens us, makes us porous enough for wisdom to enter. Think of the way the earth must be prepared before seeds will grow. The soil must be turned, the weeds cleared, the rains must fall. Only then will the seed sprout, not because the seed has changed, but because the conditions have aligned. And so it is with the messages of life. They lie dormant around us, unnoticed, until at last the conditions within us are ready. Then, what was once meaningless bursts into significance, as though it had been waiting patiently for this exact moment. And so it may be with the message you are hearing now. You could have heard these very same words years ago and felt nothing. You could hear them again years from now and feel something entirely different. But here, now, they strike with the peculiar force of inevitability. They belong to this moment because you belong to this moment, and the two are not separate. You and the message are the same wave rising in the same ocean, cresting together, inseparable. It is tempting to call this fate, or destiny, or divine guidance. And indeed, those are names we give to this uncanny harmony between inner need and outer event. But the deeper truth is simpler. Life is whole. You and the words you hear are not two independent things colliding by chance. They are expressions of the same unfolding, the same awareness manifesting as thought, as sound, as recognition. The timing feels mysterious because you do not see the whole pattern. You see only the fragment, the meeting point, not the vast web of conditions that made it possible. But if you could see it all, you would know that it could not have been otherwise. When you look back upon your life, you may notice how many such moments have shaped you. The chance encounter that changed your direction, the unexpected failure that opened a new path, the heartbreak that taught you compassion. At the time, these events seemed random, even cruel, and yet, later, you may recognize them as the very ground from which growth arose. The teaching was there, embedded in the experience, waiting until you were ready to see. The message is not separate from the life that carries it. Life itself is the teacher, and every moment is a lesson. So when a message arrives that feels meant for you, do not cling to it as though it were a rare jewel to be hoarded. Instead, see it as the echo of your own awareness, calling back to remind you of what you already are. The truth of who you are cannot be given to you, for you already possess it. What the words provide is only a mirror, a reflection that allows you to see more clearly. The resonance you feel is the sound of your own being, recognized at last. This is why the message feels alive. It is not information, it is transformation. It does not merely add to your store of knowledge, but reorients your vision, turning you toward yourself. And when you feel it strike, it is because the timing is perfect, because the whole of your life has prepared you for this recognition. Nothing has been wasted, not the failures, not the doubts, not the fears. Each has played its part in bringing you here to this exact moment where the message you were meant to hear becomes audible at last. The curious thing about messages is that they are never truly finished. Even when a sentence ends, the silence that follows carries its own meaning. And when a lecture concludes, the words continue to echo in the chambers of the mind, reshaping themselves into new insights long after the voice has faded. A message that finds you is not confined to the moment of hearing. It lingers, germinates, grows. You may walk away believing you have understood, only to discover days later that the understanding has deepened, that the words have taken root in some hidden part of you. This is why we must be careful not to treat wisdom as though it were a possession, a jewel to be locked away in a cabinet. Wisdom is alive, and to treat it as a possession is to kill it. What was once vibrant becomes brittle. What was once fluid becomes rigid. And so, to keep wisdom alive, we must return to it again and again, not with the expectation of hearing something new, but with the openness to hear it differently. The words may not change, but you will, and each encounter will reveal something fresh. Think of it like returning to a river. You may step into the same stream again and again, but it is never the same water that touches your skin. The current moves on, new waters flow in, and so each visit is both familiar and entirely new. So it is with the teachings that move us. Each time you hear them, you are not the same person you were before, and so they strike you differently. They find you again at a new depth, in a new season of life, and the resonance continues. The greatest danger is to assume that once you have heard a message, you have exhausted its meaning. This is the arrogance of the mind, which seeks to categorize and conclude, to say, I know that already. But the most profound truths are not things you know once and for all. They are things you live moment by moment, again and again. To say, I know that I am not separate from the world, is not the same as living with the felt reality of inseparability. To say, I know that all things change, is not the same as flowing with change in the midst of loss. Knowledge can be stored away, but wisdom must be renewed in each breath. This is why the message you were meant to hear does not end with the hearing. It continues as a practice, as a way of being. It whispers in the quiet choices you make, in the way you respond to frustration, in the way you soften toward yourself and others. It is not a grand revelation to be remembered, but a gentle rhythm to be lived. So let us return to the question, why does the message arrive when it does? Why not sooner? Why not later? To answer this, we must look closely at the nature of readiness. We often think of readiness as something we can control, as though we could prepare ourselves perfectly for wisdom to enter. But readiness is not an achievement, it is a surrender. It is not that you make yourself ready, but that life wears you down until you can no longer cling to your defenses. Readiness is the collapse of resistance, the softening of the shell, the moment when you can no longer maintain the illusion of control. Think of the way a seed must crack open before it can grow. To the seed, the cracking may feel like destruction, like death, but in truth, it is the beginning of life. So too with us. Our moments of breaking are often the moments of greatest possibility. What feels like the end is often the opening, the place where light enters. And it is in those moments that the message finds us, not because it was absent before, but because we are finally porous enough to receive it. This is why suffering, though painful, often becomes the soil of transformation. It is not that suffering is inherently good or desirable, but that it dissolves the rigid certainties we cling to. It humbles the mind that believes it has everything figured out. It softens the heart that has grown hard with pride or fear. And in that softening, the message can enter not as a doctrine imposed from outside, but as a truth recognized from within. Yet there is another side to this. For just as suffering can prepare the ground, so too can joy. There are times when beauty itself is the message, when a sunset leaves you breathless, when music draws tears from your eyes, when laughter reminds you that life is worth living. In those moments, too, the message arrives, not in words, but in presence. The teaching is not always a correction. Sometimes it is an affirmation, a reminder that the world is already whole, that you are already included, that nothing is missing. And so the message is not bound to a single form. It may come as a lecture, a book, a conversation with a friend. It may come as silence, as nature, as the simple act of breathing. To look for it only in one form is to miss its endless variety. The message is life itself, unfolding in countless guises, always speaking, always available, but only heard when the ear is open. Now consider this. If the message always comes when we are ready, then perhaps every message you have ever heard was the right one at the right time, even if you did not recognize it as such. Perhaps even the words you rejected, the teachings you mocked, the advice you ignored, played their part. They planted seeds that lay dormant until the season was right, and even your resistance was part of the process, for it shaped the path that brought you to where you are now. This means that nothing is wasted. No conversation, no book, no experience lies outside the web of meaning. Even what seems irrelevant or mistaken may reveal itself later as essential. The fragments fit together in ways you cannot see, and only in hindsight do you realize that each played its part. So too with this message. You may not grasp it fully now, but perhaps later it will blossom, and you will look back with gratitude that it was waiting for you here. But there is an even deeper implication. If the message finds you when you most need it, then you too may become the bearer of a message for someone else. Not because you have all the answers, not because you must preach or persuade, but because simply by living, you become part of the pattern. A word spoken in kindness, a gesture of understanding, a moment of honesty, these two can arrive with uncanny timing for another. You may never know it, but your life may be the message that someone else most needs to hear. This is why it is important not to underestimate the power of presence. You do not have to contrive grand teachings or prepare elaborate speeches. Sometimes your simple being, your willingness to show up authentically, carries more weight than any doctrine. For presence itself is the message that life is whole, that awareness is enough, that nothing is missing. And so we return to the heart of the matter. The message you were meant to hear is not a secret code hidden away in distant texts. It is the ongoing revelation of life itself, unfolding in this moment. As you listen, as you breathe. The timing feels uncanny because you are beginning to notice the harmony that has always been there, the inseparability of inner and outer, of self and world. The message is not separate from you. You are the message, embodied, enacted, spoken in every gesture. To realize this is to find a profound peace. For then you no longer chase desperately after answers, as though they were hiding somewhere beyond your reach. You see instead that the answers arise with the questions, that the teaching and the student are not two. You see that life itself is the teacher, and you are both the listener and the voice. And in that recognition, the urgency drops away. You can rest, knowing that nothing is missing, that what you need will find you when you are ready. So, perhaps the greatest message of all is this: trust the unfolding. Do not rush, do not grasp, do not despair. The words you need, the experiences you need, the lessons you need, they're all woven into the fabric of life, and they will appear at the moment when they can be received. Trust that timing, for it is wiser than your plans. Trust that pattern, for it holds you even when you cannot see it. Trust that life, for it has carried you here to this moment, where the message you were meant to hear has found you at last.
Just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple. Yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Have you ever noticed that suffering is not so much in the pain itself, but in the way we cling to it, resist it, and try to escape from it? It's curious, isn't it? The moment you resist a thing, you magnify it. The moment you push against a thought, you give it strength. And so much of what we call suffering isn't in the rain that falls upon us, but in the way we curse the storm. Now, I'm not suggesting that life is free of difficulty. Far from it. Life has always been a dance of opposites. Pain and pleasure, gain and loss, birth and death, they are as inseparable as the front and the back of a coin. But here is the trick. You see, suffering is not the same as pain. Pain is simply what is. The sting of loss, the ache of the body, the tears of parting, these are natural as the tides. But Suffering is the story we weave around it. It is the why me. It is the clinging, the holding on, the desperate attempt to control what was never in our control. There is an old saying in Zen, let go or be dragged. And this is precisely the matter at hand. When you stop clutching, when you let the river flow, you find that the water carries you. But when you stiffen, when you insist on paddling against the current, you exhaust yourself. And then, of course, you call that exhaustion suffering. Now imagine this for a moment. Suppose you are sitting in a concert hall, listening to the most marvelous symphony. The violins rise, the horns call, the drums thunder, and then there are those soft silences between notes. If you tried to cling to one particular note, one particular moment, you would miss the music entirely. And yet that is what so many of us do with life. We clutch to the past, we resist the present, and we demand that the future turn out just so. And in this struggle, we suffer. Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Isn't that delightful? You stir up the pond, and then you panic, wondering why you cannot see. But if you would only stop meddling, if you would let the water settle on its own, it becomes clear again. This is the essence of ending suffering. To stop trying to force clarity, to stop grasping for control, to let life be. And yet, here comes the paradox. The very moment you try to let go, you will find yourself grasping at letting go. You will say, I must stop suffering, I must drop it, I must let it go. And suddenly, suffering is right back in the room, laughing at you. So, what do? You don't do. You notice, you watch. You become aware of this game you are playing. And in that very awareness, a kind of miracle happens. The grasping begins to loosen on its own. This is why I often say, man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun. Life is a game, a play, a cosmic hide and seek. You are it, pretending not to be it. You are the universe playing at being a person. And the moment you recognize that this whole drama isn't meant to be taken with such deadly seriousness, you begin to laugh at your suffering. And what happens when you laugh? You loosen, you breathe, you live. Think of a child. A child falls, scrapes its knee, and within moments they are up again, laughing, running. The pain is there, yes, but it has not yet solidified into suffering. Why? Because the child has not learned to weave long stories about it. They haven't yet learned to cling. But we as adults become very good at storytelling. We carry our wounds like treasures, retelling them, protecting them, building identities around them. And in this endless narration, we suffer far more than the original wound ever required. So let me tell you a story. One you may have heard before, but it bears repeating. There was once a Chinese farmer. One day, his horse ran away, and the neighbors came and said, "Oh, that's too bad." And the farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, bringing with it 7 wild horses, and the neighbors came again and said, "Why, how wonderful!" And the farmer said, "Maybe." The day after, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses, and he was thrown off, breaking his leg. The neighbors rushed in, "Oh, that's terrible." And again the farmer said, "Maybe." The very next day, conscription officers came, looking for young men to draft into the army. But because the son had a broken leg, they passed him by. And the neighbors cried, "How fortunate!" And the farmer, as always, replied, "Maybe." Now, the point of this story is not about being clever or detached. It's about seeing that life is endlessly unfolding, and our judgments of good and bad, fortunate and unfortunate, are terribly short-sighted. When you see this, you begin to loosen your grip on things. You stop suffering over each twist of the plot, because you realize you are not meant to judge the story, you are meant to experience it. Man is a little bit afraid. He wonders what will happen next. But that is precisely the adventure. The attempt to escape suffering is often the very root of it. You fear the unknown, you fear loss, you fear death. But all of these are part of the adventure. The trick, you see, is not to get rid of the storm, but to learn to dance in the rain, not to abolish the silence, but to hear the music within it, not to conquer death, but to realize that death is what makes life so exquisitely alive. And so, if you wish to stop suffering now, Don't begin with the attempt to rearrange life. Begin with the way you see it. Look at the river, look at the sky, look at your own thoughts, rising and falling like clouds, and see they were never under your control anyway. When you allow them to flow, you discover a strange thing. Suffering evaporates, and in its place there is a kind of deep, wordless peace. It is not the peace of having solved everything, but the peace of no longer needing to. The more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless. Suffering comes from our desperate attempt to make the impermanent permanent. We want the joy without the loss, the life without the death, the gain without the risk. But this is to want a one-sided coin, and a one-sided coin does not exist. When you see this, when you truly see it, you stop fighting the rhythm of life, and in that moment suffering dissolves. So perhaps the invitation is not to escape suffering, but to see through it, to recognize it as a trick of the mind, a tightening where loosening is possible. And in this recognition, right here, right now, you are free. So we have this feeling of being a lonely little me, inside a bag of skin, looking out at a world that is foreign and often threatening. We feel that we came into this world. But did you? Or did you come out of it? Like an apple comes out of an apple tree. Have you noticed this peculiar illusion we carry? The sense that we are strangers in the universe, accidental visitors, isolated egos inside these fragile shells of flesh. We imagine ourselves tossed into a world that does not belong to us, that is indifferent or hostile. And because of this illusion, we feel lonely. We feel afraid. We feel the weight of being a separate self, adrift in a vast, uncaring cosmos. But pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, did you really come into this world? Or did you come out of it? Just as a leaf comes out of a branch, just as the wave rises out of the sea, the universe has been unfolding for billions of years. And here you are, a blossoming, an expression, a ripple in its eternal dance. You are not a visitor. You are the happening itself. Consider the wave. A wave curls upon the ocean surface. It rises, takes form, gathers strength, and if it could think, it might say, look at me, I am a wave, I am important, separate, special. But the wave also fears. It sees its own end approaching as it tumbles toward the shore. It trembles at the crash, thinking it will vanish forever, and so it suffers. But what the wave forgets, what we forget, is that it is never separate from the ocean. Its water is the ocean's water. Its motion is the ocean's motion. The crash upon the shore is not the end of the wave, but a transformation. It returns to the sea, just as it always was the sea. You are that wave. You may call yourself by a name, John or Jane, but your true identity is oceanic. You are the universe itself, playing at being a temporary ripple. And when you see this, fear dissolves. Loneliness fades, because you realize you cannot fall out of the ocean. You cannot be lost. You are the ocean, forever folding into new forms. Now let's deepen this. The universe is not merely ocean, but a great play of opposites. Light and dark, sound and silence, life and death. We live in a system of polarity. The crest of the wave cannot exist without the trough. The heartbeat itself, systole and diastole, contraction and expansion. If the heart stopped alternating, you would not be alive. Yet what do? We try to cling to one side and reject the other. We worship the light but curse the darkness. We chase pleasure but resist pain. We want to live but we fear death. And here is the trick. You cannot have one without the other. It's like trying to play a game of chess with only white pieces, or trying to listen to music with only sound and no silence. The opposites define one another. Without the background of night, the stars would not shine. Without silence, music would be meaningless. Without death, life would lose its urgency, its beauty. But suffering arises when we forget this is a game, when we treat one side as an enemy to be conquered, rather than a partner in the dance. The yin-yang symbol, you see, is not static. It's always turning, always flowing. The black contains the seed of white, and the white contains the seed of black. They chase one another like lovers, like dancers. The universe is not at war with itself. It is in love with itself. It is playing, it is dancing. And you are one of its graceful movements. Now let's take another metaphor. Imagine life as a grand theater. The curtain rises, the actors step onto the stage, and the play begins. To be a good actor, you must believe in your role. If you are playing the tragic hero, you must weep real tears. If you are playing the clown, you must laugh with all your heart. But the great actor never forgets. This is a role. The tears are real, yet they are also play. When the curtain falls, the actor steps off stage, removes the costume, and goes home. Now here is the human predicament. We have forgotten we are actors. We are stuck on the stage, utterly convinced the play is reality itself. We take our role as John or Mary with such seriousness, such gravity, that we suffer as if the play were eternal. But what happens when you remember, when you see that the role is temporary, that the curtain will fall? You do not stop acting. In fact, you act even better, because you can give yourself fully to the role, knowing it is not the whole of you. You are not just the actor, you are the audience, watching the play unfold. You are the playwright, weaving the story. You are the stage itself, upon which the drama appears. And when you realize this, the tragedy loses its sting, the comedy sparkles, and even the sorrows of life become part of the magnificent performance. But perhaps the deepest illusion of all is the sense of separation. This feeling of being a lonely little me, trapped in a bag of skin, peering out at a world that is other. Science will tell you quite correctly that your body is made of stardust, that the iron in your blood was forged in the heart of stars that exploded billions of years ago, that the breath you inhale right now was exhaled by trees, and the breath you exhale is food for them. You are not separate from the environment. You are the environment. You don't live in the universe. You are the universe, living as this particular form for a little while. The illusion of being separate is the root of fear, and thus the root of suffering. Because if you believe you are only this fragile ego, you must constantly defend it, protect it, cling to it, and of course it feels terrifying to lose it. But when you see through the illusion, when you realize you are the ocean, the wave, the actor, the stage, the whole cosmic drama, then death itself loses its teeth. Because how can the universe lose itself? It is only changing costume, only shifting masks, only moving from one dance to another. Let me share with you one final image. The Hindus say the universe is a game of hide and seek. God, or Brahman, hides from himself by becoming us, by becoming the world of forms, by pretending to be you and forgetting. Why? Because there is no fun in playing a game where you already know the ending. So the self hides from itself, takes on the disguise of you, and pretends to be lost. And the whole adventure of life is the thrill of seeking. But sooner or later, the game reaches its turning point. The mask slips, the curtain is lifted, and you remember, it was me all along. I was the seeker and the sought, the hider and the finder, the player and the game. And then you laugh, because you realize suffering was never more than forgetting the playful nature of it all. You are the aperture through which the universe is looking at itself and exploring itself. And when you know this, not as an idea, but as a lived reality, life transforms. The fear of death loosens. The grip of loneliness fades. The seriousness of suffering dissolves. Because you remember, you are not merely in the cosmos. You are the cosmos. And this whole drama, with its joys and sorrows, is your play. So how does one stop suffering now? The ego's first instinct is to find a method, a technique, a new thing to do, to try even harder to control the game. But that is like a person trapped in quicksand, struggling. It only sinks them deeper. The way is not to grasp, but to let go. We human beings are funny creatures. When faced with the challenge of suffering, our first thought is always, what should I do? We want a prescription, a technique, a map. We want some clever method that will finally fix it all. But do you see the trick here? The very one who is suffering, the grasping, anxious self, is the one trying to end suffering. It's like a dog chasing its own tail, or like a man in quicksand who thrashes and flails, only to sink deeper with every effort. The harder you try to be free, the more tightly you bind yourself. Because the very act of trying is rooted in resistance, and resistance is the seed of suffering. This is why control never quite works. You say to yourself, I must let go, I must relax, I must trust, and already you are clutching at relaxation, grasping at trust, forcing yourself to let go. It's absurd, isn't it? And yet, this is the human predicament. We try to control the uncontrollable. We try to clutch the river with our hands. And then we wonder why we come up empty. Letting go is not something you do. It is what happens when you see that there is nothing to hold on to. It's like opening your hand and realizing it was empty all along. It is that we are constantly labeling events as good or bad, fortunate or unfortunate, based on a tiny sliver of perspective. But the truth is, we do not know. We cannot know. The story is still unfolding. Our endless judgments, our compulsive labeling, they are the very roots of anxiety. We live in constant tension, afraid of what may come, desperate to hold on to what we call good, terrified of what we call bad. But if we could live like the farmer, with that soft smile of maybe, suffering would dissolve like morning mist. So then, what is the alternative? If not control, if not judgment, what is left? Attention. Pure, unfiltered, childlike attention. Instead of trying to change what is, try simply to look at it. Feel the anxiety in your chest. Don't call it bad. Don't try to fix it. Just feel it as it is. Listen to the sound of the rain on the roof. Don't call it pleasant. Don't call it unpleasant. Just listen. Look at the light filtering through the trees. Don't say, how beautiful. Don't say, how ordinary. Just look. And when you do this, something miraculous happens. The world, which had grown flat and gray, suddenly becomes alive again. Everything shimmers with mystery, as if seen for the first time. You become like a child, and for a child, everything is gee whiz. The most ordinary pebble is a jewel. The most common insect is a dragon. The whole world is vibrant, alive, radiant. Now, I must warn you to live this way feels like living without a net, because the ego desperately wants guarantees. It wants security, certainty, a safety rope to cling to. But life offers no such thing, and that, my friends, is its beauty. The tree does not ask for a guarantee of spring. It simply blossoms. The bird does not demand a contract with the sky. It simply spreads its wings and flies. Living without a net is to realize you don't actually have to let go, because there is nothing to hold on to. There never was. You see, all along, you have been like a man clutching at empty air, imagining it was a rope. And when you finally look, you laugh because there is nothing to release. You are already free. This is the wisdom of unknowing. We are so desperate to know, to pin down, to fix, to explain. But what if we could rest in the vastness of not knowing? What if we could meet each moment without the burden of labels, without the need for certainty? Then life would not be a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. The river flows, and you flow with it. The wind blows, and you bend with it. The stars burn, and you burn with them. There is no plan to follow, no secret key to find. There is only this moment, this breath, this dance. And when you see this, you discover a peace deeper than answers. The peace of not needing to know, the peace of simply being. And here comes the final joke of it all. The very thing you have been searching for, freedom, peace, the end of suffering, was never hiding. It was here all along. It's like looking for your own head. You can twist and turn, peer into every mirror, ask every teacher, but you will never see it directly, because it is what you are looking from. In the same way, you are the very freedom you seek. You are the very peace you long for. You are it. Always, already here. And the moment you stop searching, the moment you stop touching, you see it like a joke that was waiting all along. And then perhaps you laugh. The real you is not a puppet which life pushes around. The real deep down you is the whole universe. And when you realize this, that there is no rope to grasp, no net to fall into, no separate self to protect, you stop struggling, you stop suffering, and you live. Not tomorrow, not when you figured it all out, but now, always now. So here we are, my friends, at the final turn of this little journey together. We began with a knot, the knot of suffering, the sense that you are a lonely little creature, cast adrift in a vast and hostile universe. And perhaps along the way you've noticed that knot beginning to loosen. Not by force, not by pulling at it, but simply by seeing it for what it is, an illusion. You see, all along, the suffering was not in life itself, but in the way we held on to it. The way we tried to freeze the dance into a still photograph. The way we insisted on being the permanent guest in an impermanent party. And life, of course, refuses. Life moves, it dances, it breathes. And so our suffering was the friction between our demand for solidity and the universe's endless fluidity. Now, let us tie the threads together. We began with separation, a skin-encapsulated ego, looking out through the eyes as if through tiny windows, fearing the world outside. We discovered that this little self, this lonely I, is no more than a mask, a role in a play. And behind the mask, why behind the mask is the entire theater, the stage, the lights, the script, the orchestra, the audience. All of it is you playing hide and seek with itself. And what a marvelous trick it is to hide from yourself so thoroughly that you can forget your true nature, only to rediscover it with a rush of laughter and tears. For what is enlightenment but a cosmic game of peekaboo? You hid, and now you see. And so, let me remind you of something very important. Life is not a journey with some grand prize at the end. It is a symphony. You don't play the symphony to get to the end of it. No one listens to Beethoven's Ninth and says, "Oh, I can't wait for the final note." That would be absurd. No, you listen for the play of notes, the rise and fall, the silence between the sounds. Life is precisely like that. It is a song. And you are invited to sing along, not to rush to the final chord. The meaning, you see, is not waiting at the finish line. The meaning is now, in the laughing child, in the sound of rain against the window, in the pulse of your own breath. The tragedy of human suffering is that we forget the music and try to turn it into a race. We strain to arrive, all the while missing the very thing we came for, the dancing of the notes. And this is why, you see, the masters, the sages, the poets, they laugh. They laugh not because they mock life, but because they finally got the joke. They realized that there was nothing to get. Now, think for a moment of a dancer. A dancer does not dance to arrive at a particular spot on the floor. If they did, the quickest way would be to walk directly there. No, the dancer dances because the movement itself is the delight. So too with the universe. It does not spin galaxies into being because it needs them to arrive somewhere. It spins because spinning is its joy. You are not here to accomplish some divine checklist. You are here because the cosmos could not resist the artistry of making a you. You are its pirouette, its laughter, its brushstroke of color. But remember this, the dance always includes its opposite. The spin requires the stillness. The music requires the silence. The wave requires the trough. So don't imagine that to live in harmony means to avoid sorrow, or to escape death, or to outrun the shadow. To live is to embrace the shadow as the partner of the light, to hold both hands in the dance. Suffering only arises when we insist on clinging to one hand and rejecting the other. Think once more of the wave. The wave rises, curls, and crashes, and all the while it trembles, saying, "I must not end. I must hold myself together." But the truth is, the wave never ends. Its water was the ocean all along. When it falls, it simply returns to itself. And you, dear listener, are precisely the same. You are not something apart from this grand ocean of being. You are the ocean waving. And when you fall, you do not end, you return. So breathe. And in that breath, realize it is not you breathing. It is the cosmos breathing through you. And so, perhaps you wonder, what am I to do now? And the marvelous answer is, nothing in particular. Or rather, everything. There is no prescribed action, no secret key, no final step. The great relief of awakening is that life no longer needs to be conquered. You don't need to force it into meaning. It is meaning already. Just as a flower does not bloom with an agenda, you do not need one either. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a mystery to be lived. Try this. Tomorrow morning, as you step outside, don't name anything you see. Don't call it tree, don't call it bird, don't call it sky. Just look, just listen. Let the universe wash over you, without the filter of labels. you will find it is alive, shimmering miraculous, because you have stopped trying to make it fit into the tight little boxes of thought. So let me invite you now, the next time anxiety rises, see if you can notice it not as an enemy, but as a ripple in the dance. The next time sorrow comes, see if you can cradle it gently, like a violin note in the symphony. And the next time joy visits, welcome it, but don't cling to it. Let it pass too, for everything is part of the rhythm. Remember, you are not merely listening to the music, you are the music. Let us end, then, with this. You are a function of what the whole universe is doing. In the same way, a wave is a function of what the whole ocean is doing. You are not a puppet dangling on strings, nor a stranger lost in a foreign land. You are the land, the strings, the puppeteer, the play, the laughter, the tears. So when you suffer, remember, it is the universe stretching itself into form, into contrast, into dance. And when you let go, you realize that you were never separate at all. So go now, not with heavy commandments, but with curiosity. Look out the window. See the sky, the leaves, the people passing by. Hear the hum of life around you. Don't name it, don't judge it, just let it sing to you. For in the end, there is no end. Only the eternal music, the endless dance of energy. And in that knowing, suffering dissolves. Right here, right now.